there's times when you realise that most like live streams have like introduction music or something that kind of gets people bobbing along before you dive into it. Maybe that's what I should. Hold on, I'll do like a starting screen. Hello, everybody. I just thought I'd do a little bit of a silly little intro and see how that goes, but it didn't go as I hugely expected. Welcome to the stream. It's going to be hopefully a lovely little stream. Sly, you were not first, you were second to Matty Taylor Gaming. It's hopefully going to be a very, very, very good day, because we have some sort of news to talk about. This is where things get a little bit complicated again, because news isn't actually news, because it's all sort of like the intro. Fantastic. I'm going to record a full version now, and everyone's going to have to deal with it. But news isn't necessarily news. Everything is different narratives and all that kind of stuff, because Graham Smyth has had his say on the upcoming bits of Leeds United news, and I thought I'd have a little bit of a skim through it, just to give us a rough idea of what's been crack-a-lacking, and we can talk it through and then see where we're going from there. But who knows? Easy now, Joe. Easy now indeed, Leeds. Graham's great. Don't call him Captain Buzzkill, I like him. Ben C. Photog, which I'm assuming is meant to be photography. Hello there, hope you're doing well. And Wayne Ridley says, give us good news. I will give you the news that I can, but I cannot promise that any news is good. I can only promise that it is as accurate as I'm aware that it can be, I suppose. So, hopping over to monitor number 2, which is this one. I might actually grab the chat box and put it on monitor 2. There we go, so everyone can sort of keep up with the chat whilst we're having a look at different things. So, can someone pop something in the chat just to make sure that this version of it works? Because having moved it, there's a chance that it doesn't, which would be bad. So if we could just spam like a number, anything. There we go, that'll do. Personally, don't like Graham had a few rumours. He seems fine enough to me. He seems like someone who's doing a job. And yeah, whenever I've bumped into him, he's been really friendly and nice. So wasn't it funny to see Spain win? It was fantastic, especially with Argentina playing like the absolute bastards that they are. It's good to see that the general shithousing didn't work this time. But getting into it. Leeds have a trio of known ongoing potential transfer deals, so they prepare to decamp to the United States of America this week. That will be happening, I believe someone said on Wednesday that the squad will be travelling. That's going to be a situation of me not being able to do the fly-along, because that's going to take about 10 hours, and it's going to be an absolute piss take. I do not have the time for that. I think that afternoon I'm going for a nice walk along the beach, and then I'm watching the Odyssey later. So that's going to be quite nice. Who knows? This is a little bit of padding and filler. The squad's going to fly out, etc., etc., etc. FIFA mandated 3-week post-tournament breaks for any players that played in the World Cup. Muharemovic has resumed his holiday after he came to Elland Road last week, but that's fine. One of 3 players Leeds are currently tracking is also now on his 3-week break from football. Important to note, this 3-week break can sort of have discussions of transfer stuff during it, because as we found out with Tariq Muharemovic. However, it's not a guarantee, because we know that when someone's on holiday, they don't necessarily want to be answering work calls, and that's completely fine. But one of the players that Leeds are linked with is James Trafford, who was part of the England squad that finished 3rd in the World Cup. I was genuinely surprised that James Trafford wasn't the choice of goalkeeper for that match. I'll be honest. I thought it wouldn't be Dean Henderson. I think Trafford is, in the long term, going to be groomed for that role because it makes more sense. He's younger, and that means that you can do what you did with Pickford and drop them in when they're fairly young and develop and develop and develop, and then you've got a goalkeeper that's getting better and better and better as a part of the national team. Instead, Dean Henderson got the minutes, which was mind-blowing to me, but it's fine. We move. The City goalkeeper could secure a move away from the Etihad this summer, and Leeds are in the conversation. Now, Leeds' role in the conversation is confusing. As far as I'm aware, it's a case of we'd like to sign him permanently, but the potential price is very, very high, and Manchester City could make it very, very difficult. So, heard a little bits of discussion around like potential loan to buy, which would ease off the fee, but that's not really the problem, because if Manchester City want a buyback, then that could cause issues in itself, because you could be like, well, okay, So we've got a top quality goalkeeper now, but there's always this ticking time bomb of if at any point Manchester City think, actually, we'd quite like him back, you immediately lose your starting goalkeeper, which I would call a little bit of a problem. The YEP understands there's no active pursuit when it comes to another goalkeeper that Leeds have been linked with. This is the weird bit, because as far as I'm aware, there's at the very least significant interest in Kjell, but that's where it ends, and this is where you get into a little bit of a complicated conversation that we'll get into in a few minutes, because I think there's a running trend that I've discussed with a fellow YouTuber that I think is probably worth keeping a little bit of an eye on. Also, no one calls it Royal Union Saint-Gilloise. It's either Union SG or Union Saint-Gilloise, so I'm not entirely sure why the Royals come in there. But either way, it's looking like the big names that we're pursuing at the moment are James Trafford and Kjell, who are very, very, very good goalkeepers. Either of those would be nice. Why do we need the Royal Saint Union goalkeeper? We are potentially looking at the Union SG goalkeeper because we need a goalkeeper, to be honest. We're going to need at least one. If Perry leaves, we're going to need two, and this is... I had a little bit of a chat about this in a video that I did not this morning, but yesterday, I think. I'm losing track of when I record things. All the days are blurring into one. But it was... No, it was this morning's, wasn't it? The potential need for Sherpen means that he is potentially a very, very, very good second-choice goalkeeper. Which, again, he could be a first choice. We don't know. Julian Brandt, who was a free agent this summer with his Dortmund contract coming to an end, remains a Leeds player. Nope, remains a player Leeds are keen to bring to Elland Road. As reported last week by the YEP, the attacking midfielder's father, Jurgen, we've been through that one, was at Thorpe Arch for talks. We're not the only club trying to land his signature. Again, highly competitive, not going to be the easiest signings, that's okay. Leeds, I'm not convinced that Milinkovic-Savic would be an easy move to do. I think it was a difficult move last year. Found his way to Napoli, and I'm not entirely sure if he'd be up for a move right now, but I'll have a look. Vanja, Milinkovic-Savic. Is there any news surrounding a move? Not tons. I mean, Spurs are linked. Hull are linked. But there's nothing screaming that he's definitely on the way anywhere. How much did he play for Napoli last season? Because if he played 27 matches for Napoli last season, which is a fairly significant amount of football. It doesn't scream he'll be moved on this season. Didn't play against Pisa. Didn't play against Udinese. Was a bit crap against Bologna. So it was dropped for the final two games of last season, but that doesn't really say much. I don't know. It's a complicated one. Reports have emerged that Leeds are in talks for Czech attacker Pavel Schulz, but the YEP understands the situation is similar to Sherpen. As it stands, we're not actively pursuing a deal, but it could change if other business doesn't materialise. For me, that says that from Graham's perspective, it is one of the two. It is Brandt or Schulz, which, fine, but I thought there was a world in which it's potentially both. I think that could make a lot of sense because Schulz can play all the way across that front line, which is kind of useful. And the one potential deal that has best earned the title of Transfer Saga this summer remains Shea Charles. Multiple reports of a deal being close or agreed have been wayward. It remains the case that we're hopeful of striking an agreement with Saints, whose valuation is not matched by Elland Road, but the stalemate is yet to be broken. That is one of the most infuriating deals. And I think we can all agree that the Shea Charles thing is one of the most infuriating conversations that we've had so far in this transfer window, because it just goes on and on and on, and I am increasingly landing on the side of just leave it. Just sod it. If they don't want to sell him, they don't want to sell him. If they do, brilliant. But it is increasingly looking like they're generally opposed to a sale, which isn't brilliant. Like, clearly he would like the move, otherwise this conversation would have been happening for so long. Clearly we want the move, otherwise we wouldn't have stayed in the conversation for too long. And clearly they want quite a lot of money. But apparently the amount of money that we're willing to put in their direction isn't enough money, which is a little bit of a shame. Like, it'd be nice if it could happen, but we'll see. Just a quick check of the chat. Miami FC looking to get Keylor Navas. That means their current second-string goalkeeper, Rocco Rios Novo, he's not that good, to be honest, Rios Novo. We can do better. Why do we want to go buy players from France for? Right, okay. Slink. I would like a simple yes/no answer to this question, and it's a very, very easy question. Would you be overall opposed to Leeds United buying players from France, or would you be happy with Leeds United buying players from France again at some point? Just a yes or no. Yes being you would like us to buy players from France. No, you wouldn't like Leeds to buy players from France. I'm waiting for a very simple response. And whilst I do so, I will dive headfirst into the next sort of topic, which is around the fact that all of the sort of narratives at the moment are getting weirder and weirder because you've got multiple stories coming out from multiple places all at once. No, because you've never heard of them. Right. Leeds United have signed several players from France, right? If we just go to Leeds United transfer, all-time transfer market. All transfers, and we'll look at our arrivals. So, I have a feeling you didn't know who Gabby Goodmanson was. And then we signed him, and he played really, really, really well. We also signed Lucas Perry last season, who did pretty well in the Cup, but okay, understandable if you weren't that big of a fan of him. We didn't sign anyone from France the season before that, or the season before that. In 22-23, we signed Georgie from Hoffenheim, rather than anywhere that was actually in France, so we'll skip over that season as well. Keep going forwards, because the season before we didn't sign anyone from France, so we don't really sign too many players from France, to be honest with you, until the season before that, when our most recent signing to that point from France was Rafinha. So, Gabby and Rafinha, both coming from France, I'm more than happy with the signing French players. That's fine by me. If you're signing from Ligue 1, go for it. It doesn't make a difference what league you're coming from. If you're good, you're good. That's what matters. Anyway, where were we? Are you looking forward to the Odyssey? Looks right. It doesn't look a load of poop. It looks genuinely very good. Plus, it's a Nolan film, and I don't really miss Nolan films because they're all fantastic. And if we aren't careful, this is going to turn into a Christopher Nolan film tier list because I really like Christopher Nolan films. I wonder if he knacks around with time in this one as well, because he's very, very good at that. But it doesn't really work for the Odyssey. I don't know. We'll have to find out. But yeah, signing Rafinha from France should be the end of that conversation. He is probably, in terms of raw talent, one of the best players to ever play at Leeds United. So to go, no, we shouldn't sign anyone from France is a little bit daft. I'm a minute or two behind live, so apologies if you end up covering this. Do we think Leeds are just being tight-lipped with our local press? I don't think so. I don't think it's a case of being Well, I think it's a case of being tight-lipped with everyone. So Leeds, as the club, aren't really in the business of leaking information as often as other clubs do. No, he doesn't mess with time. Spoilers, Rich. It's fine. Where was my brain going? Yeah, Leeds as a whole don't really do leaking information recently. Like, occasionally the odd thing will slip, probably in the direction of the Daily Mail, or it will come out to local journalists a couple of days after something has happened. But Leeds aren't usually in the business of just letting information go. Because we've seen in the past, in the case of Gakpo, in the case of Bamba Dieng, in the case of Strand Larsen, that if you are being too loud about... Paixão, another example. If you're being too loud about the deals that you're making, then other clubs will notice and they'll go, shit, there's actually really good value there, that's something that we should be jumping on. Which means that ultimately you end up leading to more and more competition for your moves, which means that those moves are less likely to happen because other clubs are hunting down the players that you're looking at. That is something that clearly we're trying to avoid now, so we're waiting until something concrete has happened, then a couple of days later we're going, okay, journalists, here's what happened. Which means that we're on a couple of days worth of lag compared to what's actually going on. However, then you end up with the weirdness around Sassuolo, for example, with Muharemovic, where very clearly something was going on, but the local press weren't aware of that. The local press were kind of like, well, we've got interest in Muharemovic, but nothing's happened yet. And at the same time, Fabrizio Romano was like, hello, Leeds are more than interested, Leeds have put in a bid. So you've got two sides bouncing off each other, and that's why you need to consider that it's not Leeds keeping the locals in the dark, it's Leeds keeping everyone in the dark. And it's Sassuolo or Southampton or, I don't know, Man City or wherever we're potentially signing players from that are being the loud ones. It's not a case of Leeds going, sod the locals, it doesn't matter. It's more a case of Leeds going, let's keep stum. And then the story comes out from somewhere else, and our local press is left to sort of scramble a little bit and try and keep up with the story, which is, like, fine. I don't mind that too much, to be honest with you. I'm not in the position where, like, everything needs to come out of the YEP or anything along those lines, like I know some people can be sometimes. It's more a case of, I don't know what that sound was from outside. Sorry, my window's open, so it means that the sound can be a little bit jank. But it's one of those cases of getting a deal done and across the line relies sometimes on silence and discretion. And it feels like we are very much invested in keeping that silence and keeping that discretion and keeping things nice and sort of concrete and tight. But we're not the only part of this sort of plumbing system of news, and if there's leaks anywhere else, that's where information's coming from. So it's not on our end that we're keeping people in the dark, it's that we're keeping everyone in the dark, and that just looks like it's a local in the dark kind of job. Yes, rest in peace, Kevin Keegan, indeed. I hope his family are all okay. Mbappe is probably the new Thierry Henry. What do you mean is probably the new Thierry Henry? That's such a weird sort of way of phrasing it. I think Mbappe is the first Mbappe. He does different things. Cantona was from Wednesday, was he? I don't know. Eric Cantona, transfer market. He wasn't. He was from Nîmes. That's a weird career. So he goes from Auxerre to Martigues, but as a permanent, he goes to Marseille. Then he goes on loan to Bordeaux. Then he goes on loan to Montpellier, and then he goes on a permanent to Nîmes. And then a season later, he joins Leeds. He did not stay at any single club for long. That's insane. Why? And then he went to Scum, for which he shall forever be considered a bastard. But that's fine. That's the way we got to do, you know. Suzuki for 30 or Trafford for 40. What do we prefer? I don't like sitting on a fence. But sometimes you need to sit on a fence because it's more comfy than falling into a garden full of barbed wire. If it's affordable, Trafford. But I don't know what the finances look like at the minute, which means that it might not be affordable, which keeps things a little bit more complicated. But Suzuki is equally a very, very good goalkeeper. I'll have a quick look. Zion Suzuki. I'm going to call it a question of age as well. So Zion Suzuki is 23. James Trafford can't be much older than that, or younger than that. That sounds like James... Yeah, Trafford's also 23. Oh, in that case, Suzuki. I thought Suzuki was a few years older, but you got the same sort of duration on either sort of way. You've got a significant amount of time with both of those goalkeepers, which is absolutely fine by me. I'll take that. If you can have him for years and years and years and years and years, and then you can build a team around them, then that's what we want to do. But building a team around a goalkeeper gets a little bit complicated when a goalkeeper potentially looks for a move elsewhere, which is where we're going to need to be sort of clever with it. We're going to need to be a little bit more long-term and improve things. And I don't know whether we'll do that or not. But Zion loves Tanaka too. He will, which is another sort of promising addition. The fact that we like building those sort of friendships in our side. The fact that we had Harry, like Rodon and Ampadu and James, and at the time, Darlow, was probably beneficial to us signing Harry Wilson. And then we signed Harry Wilson and everyone was very, very happy. And a lot of that will have come from the fact that we've got a gang of Welshmen already there that helps him become a part of the club culture. The same kind of vibe applies when it comes to Zion Suzuki. It's real hard moving to a completely new country, especially when you are not the most fluent in the language. having someone there that you are able to talk to in the form of our Tanaka will be massively beneficial, because Tanaka can also introduce you to people. As we saw in the sort of first day back in training video, Rodon was introducing Harry Wilson to as many people as he could, and he was like sort of excited to show off his best friend. And that's what we kind of need. We need someone that is happy to just go, look, here's you, here's you, here's you, here's you, everyone be friends, and the squad integrates a little bit more quickly, which is lovely. I like it. But if it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. We've got some significant moves coming, though, which is fine by me. Could Old Trafford for more once he gets that England #1 spot is win-win for me. That's true. I think if there is something like a Man City like buyback clause going on there, then that feels like something that could be useful, because it's always going to be worth more than what we sell him for. Buy him for. That one. Never officially signed for Wednesday. He was on trial until we signed. Okay, right. This is ancient history. This is before I was born. Let's keep that in mind. I do not know this. Spent a lot of time delving into tactics performance. I can see Mbappe and the new Henry. They're both French, quite good at goals and stuff. Yeah, I mean, they both also play off the wing inside, which I guess is a little bit of a link that you can form. But I don't know. They're both very, very unique. Right, so I would like to make a note that we have still not had an apology from consistent chat member Hannah Bone surrounding the vicious debate of, is Countdown better or is 15-1 better? I do have a fairly potentially significant update on the Muharremovich contract, which I will get to in a couple of minutes. This is a rumour that I've heard from like 3 or 4 different places, so I will dive into that in a moment, but I will dive into that once we go through today's, and people that watch me consistently know what this is going to be, Countdown numbers game. Yes, Hannah is still holding the stream hostage, but that's fine. We'll go, what do we think? 1 big or 2 big? I'm going to go 1 big. 50. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we're looking for 344. Right, got it already. 8 minus 1 is 7. Multiply that by 50 is 350. Minus the 6, 344. There we go. That was today's countdown segment. Right, back to it. It's going to stay a segment until, like, Hannah has that conversation and is like, no, 15-1. 15-1 isn't as good as Countdown, because Countdown is brilliant. And I will continue to lose viewers during these segments as a result of it, but that's fine. Having someone from your own country is beneficial, hence now we buy Demirovic after Tarek. I don't think that's going to happen. I think, is Demirovic even Bosnian? Yes, I think he is. Let's have a quick search. Ermedin Demirovic. I remember his name from last season, like it's a CIA keyword. It's like, no, remember, this is a player that we were linked with. Oh yeah. Yes, also Bosnian. That makes a lot of sense. Right, anyway, moving on to it. Something that I'd potentially heard on the Muharremovich thing, and this is not guaranteed fact, but this is something that I've heard from a couple of different people that might be worth considering, and might be something that we're doing with several of the contracts that we're signing players to, that could be a part of our strategy for the season, which I think is potentially of interest. But we're not doing Sudokus. Sorry, we're doing TV game shows. That's what counts around these parts. But what is potentially very interesting is that there are rumours and word that potentially Muharremovich has a sell-on clause in his contract. This is, again, something that isn't like a guaranteed thing. It's something that is being sort of discussed and linked with, but I'm going to use it as a sort of jumping on point to a little... He did know Bogle, yes. But I'm going to use it as a bit of a jumping on point to a wider sort of conversation around the fact that Leeds are going to have to be clever with their contracts throughout this summer. So someone like not Demirovic, you've got Demirovic in my head, Muharremovich, that's the guy, knows that he has a really high ceiling. We know that he's... Hello, Hannah. I'm sure that you will not be too mad, but we have already done today's segment. We will stop doing the segments once you admit that Countdown is better than 15-1. But anyway, I'm doing all right, thank you, David Lofthouse. I'm trying to not look like Steve Coogan, but it's not superior. Stop it. But the idea that Leeds are making their contracts both beneficial to us, so in the event that he were to leave, we would presumably make a vast profit, but also making sure that we can acquire these quality players, because if you're in the Premier League and you're not one of the top sides, those really promising players aren't likely to come to you because, well, you can probably get into a Champions League club somewhere else, and from that point, prove that you are able to play to a good standard against Champions League sides, which makes a little bit of sense, and then find your move to the top clubs. Instead, we need to advertise ourselves as another sort of route for that. We need to advertise ourselves as, look, if you come to Leeds, you can still play against top sides. And if you massively increase your value, there is actually a route outwards, which is something that we did with Rafinha, for one example, and is something that I believe we will continue to do. It's understandable that we have potentially got an exit clause in Muharamovic's contract that will be a significant profit to Leeds, because in that case, if we look really good, he looks really good, and someone swings in with about 70 million quid, we can go, that's fine, Muharamovic, out you pop, we'll replace you with someone with a similar level of quality. Which is, in the short term, going to be a little bit of pain for Leeds United fans. This is, like, we have to understand that. That's what this is going to be. But whilst we do need to keep that in mind, it is ultimately going to be good for us because it pushes us in that sort of positive direction. There will be short-term hurt, but we will be effectively brightening ourselves. And I mean that in terms of the place and the club, as opposed to the concept of to brighten something, to make something more bright. But we'll be making ourselves a place where young players can go, look, I will massively improve my craft here, and then I will move on. The club that I've gone to will profit, and then I'll sort of move forward in my career. And that is an unpleasant sort of vibe for fans a lot of the time. I completely understand it. No one wants to be that stepping stone club. I understand completely. But it makes sense. It makes a hell of a lot of sense. And it also adds up with what we were saying about our academy strategy in the pitch deck that came out last year, which was effectively, look, we're going to invest a decent amount of money into our academy. It'll be a couple of million quid a year. But in the event that every few years we make vast sales and, like, we get someone that is worth about 10 to 20 million pounds every couple of seasons, that'll fund it, and it will become self-sustaining, and it won't just become self-sustaining, it'll become self-improving, which we have already seen with the signings of Linu, as one example, already part of a Wales squad at his age, in spite of the fact that he hasn't played a single senior game for us, is incredible. That is absolutely colossal for us. However, in the event that we stumble and stuff like that, we will have to take that immediate term sort of hurt of, right, we need to backfill the money that we're unable to make right now. We've not sold someone from the academy in the last 3 seasons. A bit of that money is going to have to go from the senior squad into the academy just to make sure that that runs efficiently. Which, again, is going to be a bit of a pain if we're in the situation of we've had to sell, I don't know, Ilya Gruev or something like that, and we've sold him for £10 million and we invest 6 in a replacement. People will be looking at that and going, that's not brilliant, where's the rest of the money gone? But we're a growing club, and I think being able to put that money into the right sort of places, like the academy, like wage budgets is another example, because people will see a transfer fee and go, that's not as big as the player that we sold. But if we're paying more in wages, odds are we've gotten a better player, just on a little bit of a bargain from the club. So we need to be a little bit more sort of considerate of what long-term strategy looks like at the moment at Leeds United, as opposed to what we can tend to do as fans, which is keep sort of chugging on, but in a direction where we end up going, well, the number got smaller, so I'm a little bit spooked. Like, if we come a position lower this season than we did last year, if we get 1 fewer point, I'm not going to care too much, to be completely honest with you, because we'll still be in the Premier League, and everyone is sort of looking at it and going, right, we've survived a season, let's push on. That's not realistically the case, because what the case is actually going to look like is any club that comes up from the Championship in the first season, I'm going to repeat this, which was said by Angus Kinnear initially, but it still holds true, so I'm going to keep with it. When you initially get promoted to the Premier League, you have a 50% chance of going down the next year, which is scary. Like, let's be honest there. It's a 50-50 chance that you go up or don't. Normally, one or two sides will get relegated. Sometimes it'll be all three. That's where things get properly terrifying, but I think that era might be coming to a close. I'm not convinced that... I'll be honest, looking at the clubs that came up this season, I don't think any of them are good enough to sort of survive to the extent that we in Sunderland did, but they might manage to scrape it. But the second season is just as important, because the second season is where you really get tested on your longevity. And longevity is very, very difficult to come by in the Premier League. So it's a case of, again, 50% of the clubs that survive the first season will drop off in the second season. If we're able to get by that, and if we're able to be part of the 25% of clubs that don't go down in the first season and don't go down in the second season, wonderful. Third season, a little bit easier, a little bit nicer. You've got a little bit more of that sort of long-term finance in the bank. You're able to support yourself a bit more. At least in the PSR years, you didn't have 1 year of championship revenues dragging you down and acting like an anchor. But that's why this coming season, I'm not going to be too scared if we don't make massive progress. Like, a few people are already saying if we're not in the top half, it's a failure. That's not the case. Because any potential incoming players, just to sort of respond to what Rune has said in the chat, any potential players that are looking at Leeds United and going, well, are they actively progressing? They won't see that we've gotten a couple of fewer points next season and go, well, that's not worth it. At that point, they'll see a club that has potentially come 14th and 15th in the Premier League and go, they're looking reasonably solid. They don't look like they're favourites to go down. Whoever's come up will always look like the favourites to come down, and if any of Hull, Coventry, or the third one, Ipswich, that's the one, survive this season, they will absolutely be favourites to go down the season afterwards, depending on who comes up. I think becoming more solid and retaining our position is more important than anything, because at the end of the day, clubs like Everton, who spent so long in that relegation scrap, didn't find themselves struggling to grasp at any players, because they still had that attraction of playing in the Premier League. In the long term, absolutely. In the next 3 to 5 years, I would like to see us climb the table. I would like to see us in Europe. But at a boardroom level, the club can't realistically go, it's top half or we've failed, because that's not... A, that's not realistic, and B, that's not particularly fair on the players that we've got. The players that we've got, for the most part, were signed with the idea of, you are here for championship survival. And in the event that we do survive in the championship, and not championship, Premier League, that one. In the event that we did survive in the Premier League, they're still that quality of player, and we can manage to make them better and better and better, which I think we have proven that we can do as Leeds United. But to assume that next season will be better than last season is bold, because the mid-table last season was so insanely congested. There were so many very, very good teams that were struggling and unable to get performances that they will have wanted to, that to assume that we can do the same thing again is perhaps a little bit unfair to those sides, and it's putting very, very harsh expectations on our own club. And I don't want to over-expect it, because then you get disappointed. But we'll see. I'm an optimist, as always, but I'm also sometimes a realist. And it's quite rare. But when you need to be a realist and think we're not always going to be doing better than we did the season before, especially when last season was so good, you need to sort of see that things are fine. So including things like the sell-on clauses in contracts is, at the end of the day, potentially going to be a bit of a necessity, because it means that players are more likely to come here because that is an attraction to them. The idea that if you perform to a good standard, you can still make the move and no one's going to hold you hostage or anything like that. Which is good, is ultimately what happened with Pascal Struijk, because reportedly we had a promise with him that, look, we'll turn down the bid from Spurs, I believe it was last season. We'll turn down the bid from Spurs, but if a bid comes in next season that you want, we're going to let you go because that's what you want to do. I think that's the fairest on everybody, and it means that we've got a little bit more potential to us. But anyway, I'm going to end the stream relatively shortly, but I'll get through the rest of the comments. And if anyone's got any questions or anything, throw them in my direction. That'd be lovely. And if anyone's got any suggestions for like video topics, that would equally be fan-dabby-dozy. I think Stack will be a massive star in the upcoming season. I think Stack was not an upcoming star, was a massive star last season, and I think he's going to keep that up because he is a ridiculously good player. I think Germany made a big mistake not bringing him to the World Cup, and I think that is something that has told in the fact that they didn't perform the way that they wanted to. Countdown hasn't been the same since people stopped getting bitten by ferrets. People were bitten by ferrets? What? Even the current team is better than the 3 that got promoted. Doubt Hull will win more than 5 games in the Premier League. I think they'll win a few. I think they can upset a few sides, but whether they do or not, we'll have to find out. I don't think that they survive, though. I think it would require a hell of a lot of investment this summer. Are they still looking at signing Joffy? I don't know. I don't know if we've actually agreed anything for Gelhardt or if anything is hugely rumoured around Joe Gelhardt, actually. If we... okay. Hull Live report that interest in a longer-term commitment remains on both sides, with Gelhardt keen to sign and the Tigers keen to welcome him back, but it's far from a foregone conclusion, with a permanent transfer labelled a distinct possibility but unlikely to happen in the early weeks. A potential issue could be financial, with Gelhardt set to receive a pay rise at Leeds because we got promoted back to the Premier League, so he'd be back to his original contract. So matching those terms would be a major investment for Hull. So he's got 1 year left on his contract. We want to move him on. Hull want him, but it depends on what he wants to do financially. Can you do a topic on how is Bielsa Argentinian when he's so calm and reserved and the rest of them behave like they did yesterday? Even honestly, it was insane. I don't understand what was going on with that. Yes, no sell on for Somerville. That's something that I've not seen at all. That was I think it was an exit clause sale, so I don't see how there would be a sell on clause. One story doing the rounds, you might know something about the room of you and Tyrone by the Gregs in town last night. Any confirmation? You've caught me. I know. Can you even get behind the Gregs? Yeah, maybe. I'm trying to think of which Gregs you'd potentially go for. Can't get behind that one. Can't get behind that one. Maybe the petrol station Gregs? I don't know. We'll see. Anyway, I'm going to end the stream there because it's constant talking about petrol stations and Gregs. So we'll call that there. If you enjoyed the stream, I'd massively appreciate you popping a like on it. As always, that would be fantastic. Subscribe to the channel as well. That's equally massively appreciated. I'm pushing my way towards 8,000 at the moment, and it's taking its time, I'll be honest, but we'll get there in the end. I'll become a channel member as well. That'd be quite cool. You get a bunch of videos and stuff early. Also, hugely appreciated. Gonna leave that there. Hope you enjoyed, and I will see you all later. Toodaloo. Not a 10-hour stream tomorrow. That isn't happening. I might do a short stream, not a 10-hour long one. Anyway, see you later. Learn your countdown history. Maybe I will. We'll see. Toodaloo.